Hey there, it's Susan Pierce Thompson, and welcome to the weekly vlog. So I'm shooting this video, and I honestly, truly have no idea if I'm ever going to release it. It's maybe kind of like writing a letter to someone that you have a fraught relationship with, and you doubt you'll ever send it, but there's something cathartic about writing it. Like it's for you, kind of, to write it. But I do, as a leader, as the founder and CEO of Bright Line Eating, I really do feel like there is something to say at this juncture. And I'm going to shoot this video. I'll have my team watch it. We'll discuss what to do with it. Maybe I'll reshoot something, or I don't know, maybe this will just go out as is. Who knows? Gosh, where do I start? Well, I'm going to start with Eric. Eric is a Bright Lifer, a beloved Bright Lifer. He's gay. He lives in Southern California. He started Bright Line Eating, I believe, 7 years ago. He's been a devoted member in all that time. And I got to know Eric really quite well for a little while because he applied many years ago to be my personal and executive assistant. And his application was amazing. And he got all the way through the multiple layers of interview processes to the point where we flew him out to Rochester to meet me and my family and spend some time. And I loved him, and we hired him. And then he didn't take the job, which was fine. It was an in-person job. We needed him to move to Rochester, which he knew, and he thought he was going to be on board with. But then when push came to shove, something about living in Southern California with the sun and the community that he was building there, it was good for his mental health. It was good for him all around, and he decided he couldn't move. So he felt terrible, but it was totally fine. And the good thing is I got to know him through the process. And I've been talking with him often again lately because of the topic of DEI that's come up in Bright Line Eating lately. It's been really helpful to talk with him. And I think there's more people like him in Bright Line Eating, loyal, devoted to their bright journey. They've been around for a while. And I put out, I believe, 3 vlogs between 2019 and 2022 would be my guess, somewhere in that span of years. I think I put out 3 vlogs that were really personal and heartfelt, and they had to do with Bright Line Eatings and my personal DEI journey. If you don't know, DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's a really hot button topic these days in the United States in particular, maybe around the world. I'm very much steeped in the United States right now, so I'm just aware that it's a hot topic here. And fraught, like not an easy topic at all. And it's gotten more and more fraught over the years, which makes me feel super scared to say anything about this at this juncture. But Eric was basically saying, Susan, I felt like I was on a really personal DEI journey with you. Like the vlogs you put out back then impacted me, and I really grew from them, and I went on my own journey of self-exploration. And I feel confused now about where you stand and what kind of signals Bright Line Eating has been sending out lately. And I know you, so I've been trusting you and waiting kind of for you to say something, but I've just been confused, and it's been hard for me. And so he and I have had many personal conversations that I think he would say have made him feel better. Like he feels clear now, and he feels settled. But I suspect he's not the only one, and that there's more people like him. And it's for them that I'm shooting this video. Okay, so what happened, and what am I even talking about? So what happened was in late January, our community guidelines. These are the rules essentially that delineate acceptable and unacceptable behavior and posts in the bright line eating community, and in particular the online bright line eating community, and in particular the version of it that's instantiated in Facebook. So we have two versions of it: the Facebook version for people who like Facebook, who are in Facebook. It's a pretty large group. It's got, well, I don't know, large is relative. It's got maybe 6,500 people in it. And then there's the other version of the online community that's instantiated, in our proprietary software that's not on any social media platform, which some people feel much safer in. There's no ads. There's no pop-ups. It's just our community. That group never really had any issues at all. So all the issues were in Facebook, which I think in and of itself is illustrative, right? It's like the social media platforms are a conditioned reinforcer for a dehumanization of people, so that I think we feel emboldened perhaps to say things in ways we wouldn't say them, or just interact in ways that are less heart to heart, soul to soul, person to person. And it often brings out the worst in people. So anyway, it was there that kerfuffles started to break out in late January 2025. And basically it took the form of a few posts popping up saying something to the effect of, hey, the community guidelines saying we keep politics out of bright line eating, they're not working for me right now, because either my life and identity or other people's lives and identities have just been politicized against their will, and they need to have a voice to be able to talk about their experience. And those types of posts generated long comment threads. Most of it was civil. Most of everything is always civil in bright line eating, because we got a bunch of sweethearts in our community, but some of it wasn't that civil. And then someone posted something that just said, I'm confused. Are we allowed to talk about politics in here or not? Was there a lifting of that ban? And then that post had a bunch of comments, most of which were civil, not all of which were civil. And that triggered the bright line eating team and I to realize, like, whoa, our community guidelines saying essentially we keep politics and religion out of bright line eating. Believe what you want, practice what you want, vote how you want. But here we need to focus on our singleness of purpose, which is helping people to get and live bright. We've got a bunch of people that carry trauma, that grew up in households with lots of arguing, and really healing is an endeavor that happens in a climate of safety. And this community is not the place for those types of debates. It's just not, because we would fail at our intended stated purpose, which is to help people have their bright transformation and do that healing work here. That's what we do here. So those debates need to happen outside of our community. But some people were saying, hey, is it politics if I say, hey, I'm trans and I had a trip planned overseas and I canceled it because my passport, I'm a trans woman, but my passport says I'm male, and suddenly I'm afraid that I literally might have trouble flying overseas. So I canceled my trip, but now I'm like, no, I'm going to travel. So now I have literally 24 hours to plan this trip because I'm going to do it after all. And I need to figure out how I'm going to handle the time zones with my food and what food I'm going to pack on the plane. And I'm a mess because I really am actually scared that something's going to happen to me when I try to go through security with my passport that says I'm male, but I'm a trans female, and I'm a mess. And can someone help me? Like, can they post that? Right? Or can someone say, hey, I'm Mexican American and my uncle disappeared last night. I think he got deported and I'm a mess and I keep eating over it. And I'm scared. He's the only safe male I've ever had in my life, and I love him with all my heart and soul. And he's gone, and I don't know where he is, and I keep eating, right? Like, we realized that these types of posts bumped up against our rule of keep politics out of our community in a way that revealed that our community guidelines were woefully unfit for the occasion. Like, they did not elucidate, can that person say that here or not? Is that political? Is that personal? Like, what's the deal, right? And what we did was we did a lot of work. The Bright Line Eating team and I got together and we debated and discussed and thought and crafted a new set of guidelines. Okay. And what we realized is that the whole point of not inviting politics in our community is to avoid certain types of contention and debate. So what we keep out are proclamations of the sort of, this is what I believe, are you with me or against me? Or you've got to believe this, or you're blah, 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 blah. That kind of incendiary, accusational, hostile, demeaning, belittling, bullying, hateful, contentious, riling, grandstanding types of energies needed to be kept out of our community, while a personal sharing of, this is my experience, this is what's going on in my life, and this is how it relates to my bright journey, is welcome. Kind of no matter what. Now, we do ask people to not use specific political terms, the names of politicians, the word election, bill, Senate, Congress, name all the political words, like they're all out, right? But someone just sharing their heart and soul with us is fine, right? So for clarity's sake, the two examples that I gave would be fine to post exactly as I said them, right? So we did all this work. Oh my gosh, we spent so many hours. I mean, just gajillions of gobs of human hours of thinking and discussing. And one of the things that I charged our group with as we were coming up with these guidelines kind of goes back to an evolution I've been on in the last 5 years, which is I've been becoming more and more and more fiercely independent in terms of not wanting to say or do anything that explicitly affiliates with the political left or the political right in the United States. And I charged our committee with coming up with guidelines that met that standard as well. Because from my perspective, what's happened in the United States over the last 5 years, lots of things have happened, COVID and a couple of presidential elections and all this stuff has happened over the last 5 years. It's been a pretty intense 5 years. But one of the things that's happened is an already polarized political landscape has gotten more polarized to the point where there's a whole host of almost like branded, the way a corporate branding process would happen, branded thoughts and ideologies that line up on the left and the right, where someone says the merest thing in the merest way about, I don't know, take your pick of a dozen topics, right? Palestine, Israel, COVID, Ukraine, on and on and on and on, right? You could think of all these different topics where someone says about anything. And suddenly you're thinking, oh, well, I know where they stand. They're on that side or they're on that side. And now I know everything else that they believe, right? It's like the whole kitchen sink comes with it, right? You're on one side or the other. And now I've got you pigeonholed, right? Which I vehemently disagree with. And I do not want to be aligned with. And so what I said is we've got to make sure that these guidelines are neutral and they do not align Bright Line Eating with any of that fray, which means that there are, in a DEI context, even the phrase DEI. I just gotta say, I know if you're saying, Susan, you just put out a video called DEI update, that brands you on the left, right? Just even saying the word. Yeah, I get it, right? It's that intense out there. So I said, we need to not have any words or phrases that align with either set of ideologies. Otherwise, we will have failed, right? Because we will have, that's not welcoming, right? To half the people, right? Like, we've got to abstain from that debate. Otherwise, we will not be fulfilling the mission of Bright Line Eating, which is to create a safe space for people who have an addictive relationship with food to come in and heal and recover, reclaim themselves, shed their excess weight, and be liberated from the food and weight insanity so they can have their bright transformation and fulfill their greater purpose in life, right? And that includes all the people. All the people. We want them feeling welcome here to the very best of our ability. So that means literally things like taking words like inclusivity and saying instead, everyone's welcome here, right? Just a shift of wording. Okay, so that's what we did. We came up with revised community guidelines. We put them out. And I think for some people, that was the end of it, right? I mean, we really did do the work so that people who were feeling like intimate aspects of their lives had become politicized would now be able to post their personal experience, as long as they were sharing their personal experience and how it related to their Bright Line Eating journey, right? That's what we did. And we succeeded at that, I think. Maybe some people would disagree with that. It feels to me like we basically succeeded at that. And then Eric, my beloved Eric that I was just talking about earlier, looked back a couple weeks later at the new guidelines and said, wait, but this paragraph got taken out. And it was a paragraph with a whole bunch of language in it that had been rewritten. It hadn't actually been taken out. It had been rewritten with more neutral language, like language that didn't really reflect either side of the political spectrum. And he wrote to me personally with an entreaty, like, please reconsider. This language meant something to me personally. It felt very protective. And so I guess maybe I'll just share what that language was. BLE does not accept any type of hate speech or bullying, including anti-Blackness, homophobia, transphobia, classism, anti-Semitism, fat phobia, etc. Practice love, kindness, and support in your comments to others. And then there was a blurb about pronouns, which was kept not verbatim, but we said basically in the new ones as well, use and respect the pronouns that people go by. So that paragraph wasn't in there anymore. There were the safeguards of none of that would be allowed with the new guidelines, but it was stated in behavioral terms of, everyone's respected here, right? And Eric said, yeah, but it's not the same, Susan, it's not the same. And there was this awful, hard, challenging couple of weeks, which, of course, by universe's kismet, overlapped with the 1 week of the whole year that my husband and 3 children and I go on a family vacation together. We do that once a year together. And my kids, God bless them, have sacrificed so much of their childhoods to me, forming and growing the Bright Line Eating movement. It is my commitment to them that I am with them on that trip, and I am not working on that trip. And all this was coming down, and I was seeing bits of it like on my phone as I'm literally like peeing in the Disney bathroom cruise, bathroom stall, and I'm opening Facebook and I'm experiencing stuff like someone saying, Susan, are you with us or against us? Like, this is, are you pro or anti-trans and gay? I need to know. And I'm like, what do I say to that? It was weird. I was thinking, I love you. I'm with you. And I I don't know what to say to that right now in this moment. I need to, like, it was hard. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to say. And I had a meta part of me that was watching, like, Susan, why aren't you just saying? It'd be so simple. Just type in, I love you. Of course I'm with you. I've never stopped being with you. And I didn't, and I couldn't. And I think maybe it was the Facebook thing. Again, there's something dehumanizing. Like, I didn't feel in that moment a human being saying, I'm hurting and I need you to tell me we're good. I felt some sort of distanced social media attack that felt like something I didn't want to engage in. It was tough. And I was watching myself not say anything. And a part of me was thinking, really? You're not going to say anything right now? Huh. Part of that moment is why I'm circling back to say something now. And if it's too late, I'm sorry. But there are pieces that have unfolded since then that give me the words to articulate what was going on with me that I just didn't have right then. It's interesting because I'm an extrovert. Usually I have the words right away to articulate what's going on with me. I really am feeling the introverts who just need a little bit of time to figure out what to say. You know, you just shove a microphone in their mouth and say, you've got to say the right words right now or I'm out, right? I really feel now for the introverts. I have introverts in my close family, and sometimes I have felt very let down by them when they couldn't find the words I needed to hear in that moment. It's a hard thing. So if you were hurt right then, I feel your pain now, and I'm speaking now, and I'm sorry I didn't speak then. So Eric came and said, hey, that paragraph got taken out. And it matters to me, Susan. Think about that. And one other person that I know of wrote in and said that same thing. Please reconsider that paragraph. And I took it to my spiritual advisor, and God bless her. Within 15 minutes, she had helped me bang out this other paragraph, which is now back in the community guidelines. As a matter of fact, it's the first thing in the community guidelines. And I feel really good about it. It feels better, and I'll explain why. Here's what it says now in the community guidelines, front and center. This is where it starts off. BLE does not accept any type of hate speech or bullying, including statements or actions that are disrespectful to people based on their age, race, ethnicity, sex, gender identity, sexuality, religion, lack of religion, ability, nationality, political affiliation, background, size, economic status, or ideology. All people are welcome here. Practice love, compassion, acceptance, and support in your comments to others, period. And where you and others differ, be kind and keep your eyes on your own plate. I feel great about that paragraph. And it's interesting because it's pretty similar to the other paragraph, right? But one thing I realized is that things like anti-Blackness, homophobia, transphobia, classism, anti-Semitism, and fat phobia, they're not behaviors, they're ideologies. So the difference in our new guidelines is they are specifically disallowing behaviors that hurt people based on whoever they are and however they show up, right? That's what we want to legislate. We actually can't legislate the ideologies or beliefs that people have, as long as they don't come in and hurt others in our community. We live and let live, right? So I feel really good about what we've come to. And so what about the whole DEI thing? Well, I haven't had words for that until just this week. And it's been kind of torturous for me because I've been watching all this come down. I have actually felt over the last few years distancing from DEI work for myself. And I didn't have any understanding of why. I mean, we did intensive DEI work as a company and me as a human being. Before George Floyd was murdered, back in 2019, I stepped in it. I shot a vlog about that. And I started to do a lot of work, really looking at myself. And I come from a background where what we now call DEI ideas or whatever, they're in my blood. Like, I was raised in San Francisco, right near the Castro district. I mean, my trick-or-treating territory was Castro Street in San Francisco, which means on Halloween, I was out there with the drag queens and the gays and the queers and everybody. And we were walking on rainbow colored streets and the costumes were wild and out of this world. And I lived in a neighborhood where there weren't any other kids because this was 1979, 1980, 1982, 3, 4, 5, 6. And during those years, gay couples couldn't adopt kids. I was the only kid in our neighborhood. But my neighbors were all gay and they were dying of AIDS, a lot of them. Like, I remember very specific people who babysat me, who lived underneath me in the flat below us, who died of AIDS as I was coming of age. That has an impact. I'm just born of that time. It's in me. And my dad did some organizing with the Black Panthers in Oakland in 1969. My parents were hippies. My mom has still to this day lived one of the most racially integrated lives of anyone I've ever known. And there's just a lot of love, I would say, across different aspects of human identity or whatever in my family and in my blood and in my history. And so I come by that as my upbringing. I mean, it's just, I mean, I don't know, you might not have been raised by hippies in San Francisco in the late 70s, early 80s, but I was, and it's a certain type of upbringing, right? And I did some deep DEI work inside myself with an amazing consultant named Trudy LeBron. I did it with my organization, Bright Line Eating, in 2019, 2021. And then in 2022, I've shot a vlog about this fairly recently. Bright Line Eating had an emergency. We were aiming to scale and get venture capital funding. And what happened instead is it blew up in our face and we were facing bankruptcy. And we had to lay off half of our staff and restructure the organization. And that took about 2 years to kind of do and get through. And during those 2 years, we didn't do any formal DEI work at all. It just wasn't in the cards. We were surviving as an organization, as an entity. And that's what we focused on, to the exclusion of everything else. And after we built our programs and our structures and navigated our community through different tech transitions and landed where we landed now, it kind of came back to the forefront. And it came back to the forefront in the form of, we needed to update our mission, vision, and values. And we realized that we couldn't do that unless we figured out where we stood in relation to DEI work. And I mean, don't get me wrong, we could do 90% or 95% of our mission, vision, and values without that piece. But to finish it, we needed that piece and the language for it and the orientation to it and the conceptualization of it. And fast forward to this week, when someone sent me a link that opened up a wormhole of articles that blew my mind. You may have already heard of this. I had no idea. Turns out that academia has been busy studying DEI efforts, like DEI workshops and all that, and showing for a long time they don't work. There's meta-analyses, like multiple meta-analyses of lots of studies showing DEI does not work. And I was like, really? At first I didn't believe it. So I looked into it a little more. I have to be honest, I have not read all the studies myself, but I kicked the tires on it enough to go, okay, this is not BS. Like, this is actually what the research shows. I called Trudy LeBron. I said, hey, we were talking about other stuff too, but in part of that conversation, I said, the research shows that DEI doesn't work. And she's like, yep, that's what it shows. And I said, well, what's that like for you being a DEI consultant? How do you reconcile yourself with that? And she said, God, I love this woman. She's so smart. Beyond smart. She's wise. She said, Susan, here's the thing. DEI isn't a workshop. DEI, they're outcome measures. D stands for diversity. You can look at a group of people and on different dimensions, not just race, but like different dimensions, right? Cognitive capacity, nationality, age, right? How much diversity is there in the group of people? It's something you can measure. It's an outcome measure. How much diversity is there in terms of personality profile, right? Extroverts or introverts or whatever. How much diversity is there in a group of people? E stands for equity. How equitable is the distribution of resources in a company, for example? Do you have to be a high-level C-suite manager to get professional development funds to go to a conference? Or does everyone have some access to professional development funds to grow and develop, right? How equitable is the company? And then you can look at inclusion. Like, do people feel like their voices are heard? Do they feel like someone's listening? Do they feel like if they have an idea, there's a vehicle where they could, flesh that out and maybe bring it to market? Do people feel included, or do they feel siloed and excluded? So she said, DEI, they're actually outcome measures. She said, now, the DEI workshops that are being done are often garbage. Like she said, often it's consultants going in and, whatever it is that they're doing, on balance, it's not working. Now, I did look at one of the studies and it was like, okay, this is like stuff I've been doing with Bright Line Eating. Like, okay, let's all read this book. Like right after George Floyd was murdered, there were like 5 or 6 books that were in the top 10 on the New York Times bestseller list, not because they came out that week, but because they dealt with race, right? And they were suddenly the hot books everyone was reading. And I had my team read one of these books. And it's like, oh yeah, that's not producing the outcomes people want. It's not increasing diversity, equity, or inclusion. It's making people feel more afraid, more siloed, more on eggshells, less inclined to stick their neck out and make friends across racial lines or other types of barriers. It's like, it's not actually working. And I'm like, okay, this now makes sense. So now I can articulate where I stand. And at the moment where Bright Line Eating stands when it comes to DEI, which is, we're as clear as ever that we stand for wanting an organization and a community that feels inclusive, like welcoming, where people have a voice, that feels equitable. And it's interesting, diverse to some degree. It's interesting. Like there are aspects of diversity. I mean, Bright Line Eating is not that diverse in a lot of ways. We have very little gender diversity, age diversity, race diversity, nationality diversity. I think a lot of that has to do with having me as a spokesperson. And so like has an affinity with like, and just the community looks like me in a lot of ways. It's a lot of more educated than average American white women. It's just what the community looks like. And I think having a spokesperson that's as kind of central to the image and the branding of the company is going to skew everything. I don't know. We'd have to think more about how much we stand for different forms of diversity and how far we're willing to go to stretch into other demographics. It's challenging for us. All of our coaches are white at the moment. And we also haven't hired a coach in 7. I guess we haven't hired a coach in 7 years. And we only hired one. And before that, all the coaches have been around, since like the first 9 or 10 months of Bright Line Eating. And we've retained everybody. So there haven't been any open positions. So we haven't really been hiring in that way. And you could say, well, just hire someone else. It's like, yeah, well, we're not hiring. Like we haven't hired anybody in a long time. We fired a bunch of people. We had to lay off. We didn't fire. We laid off people a few years ago, and we haven't been doing any hiring since then. So, yeah, so the diversity one poses some challenges. So, but anyway, generally speaking, I feel as committed to wanting to live in a world absolutely where the extremes of wealth and poverty are not as dire and devastating as they are right now. I want to live in a world where, just like Martin Luther King Jr. said, people are judged by the quality of their character, not the color of their skin or any other social identity that they may have. Absolutely, that's the world I want to live in. I feel less clear about how to get there, having put a whole lot of effort into a certain path and then discovering that, oh yeah, that didn't work. It's jarring a bit. I feel clear about where my heart is with people. I feel certain that if I were having a kitchen table conversation with anyone in our community, our hearts would bond and we would enjoy the evening. I know that for certain people in our community, experiencing the confluence, the coincidence, the synchronicity in time of noticing that verbiage had gotten pulled out of the guidelines, while they also noticed that their history was being erased in certain major and grotesque ways. Felt like a hugely destabilizing violation. And that is impact that I contributed to. And I am sorry. If you felt that pain, I am sorry. I feel the privilege of having a microphone in front of me and just getting to say, you know, my piece about this. I know not everyone gets that voice. And I really care about our community. And I really do want to create an environment where, God, ideally everybody would feel safe and welcome. I don't know in this landscape if that's possible, but I want to strive for that ideal. Like that's the moonshot that we're going for, that everyone would feel safe and welcome. Feeling safe is a tricky thing. Like I can think of arguments that my husband and I have had where either I've said to him or he's said to me, I don't feel safe around you. It's a thing to say, right? And here's what I think about not feeling safe. I think it's a real feeling. Not feeling safe is a feeling. Like fat is not a feeling, but not feeling safe is a feeling. It's a feeling. And it could mean any number of things. It could mean that you're where you need to be, but your environment is off and someone needs to change something in your environment so that you can feel safer. Which I think if spouses are saying to the other person, I don't feel safe around you, I think that's what they mean. Like you're doing something and you need to do something different so that I feel safer, right? But that's spouses, right? That's a certain type of environment where people have an exceedingly high level of commitment to each other, right? So, but if you're a person in an environment with other people and you say, hey, folks, I don't feel safe, it could mean that you're right where you should be and everybody else, the environment needs to change, right? It could mean that you need to leave because it's not a safe place. Like if I'm in a back alley right? We can paint a scenario where I might say, I don't feel safe. And the reality is, yeah, Susan, that's because you need to leave, right? Like that's not a safe place. You need to leave. It could be that I just don't feel safe, but there's nothing wrong with the environment. There's nothing wrong with me. I need to just be there and do some work. And sometimes we don't feel safe in all circumstances, right? Like, what would be a good example of that? Like, okay, I've got one of my best friends never feels safe on an airplane, right? Now she could say on that plane, hey folks, everybody, I don't feel safe, right? But she wouldn't say that. But the reality is she's where she needs to be. The airplane is doing what it needs to do, and she just needs to breathe and endure and get where she needs to go, right? And she in that circumstance probably just needs to accept she's never going to feel fully safe in that circumstance, but she chooses to be there because it helps meet some of her other objectives, right? Like getting from New York to California in less than the Pony Express time would take. So I'm aware that there's some people right now who aren't feeling safe in the big bright line eating community. And it could be as simple as move from the Facebook group to the circle where there has been no breach of safety. Facebook's not a very safe platform. It brings out the worst in people. It could be that the online large support community isn't their best place for getting connectivity and support in bright line eating, that better avenues are mastermind groups, buddies, Gideon Games groups, accountability calls. It could be that they're going to find just a few circle of friends and then use their bright line eating membership to download the thousands upon thousands of incredible courses and go through those courses with people they know and love and trust. And that's where the value is in their bright line eating membership. It could be that bright line eating is not for them, right? Ultimately, as always, you are responsible for your bright line eating journey. I'm responsible for me and mine. You're responsible for you and yours. We're doing the best we can. I know I am. I believe you are. Something was off and needed to be corrected and said here. I have no idea if I've done that well. I think I'll show this video to my team and they'll probably tell me quite candidly. I don't know everything. Your voice has been heard. We've been reading what you've been sending in to customer support. We've been reading it, sweating over it, crying over it, debating it, gnashing our teeth over it, beaming love back out to you over it. We've been really, really doing our best to listen. You have had input and impact hugely all along the way. You may feel that we've done wrong by you in ways that can't ever be repaired. And if so, I'm so sorry about that. And I wish you all the best in your life and on your bright journey. Truly, truly. And you might not know about any of this, right? And if so, if this video ever sees the light of day, I'd just say, I hope that the bajillions of hours that I've spent thinking about this stuff over the last month have been interesting and helpful to listen to. I often think that it's not that often that life circumstances plunge us into a level of thinking about something that's just deeper than you could get to without a certain amount of sand in the oyster. You don't make pearls without a lot of sand in the oyster, and there's been a lot of sand in the oyster. And if this video has any pearls, then I think my team will tell me you might want to put it out there. If not, we'll just bury it, and that's okay too. It felt good to say. It's been a hell of a month. I think that's all I've got. That's it. Thank you for listening. That's the weekly vlog. I'll see you next week.